All right, so Erik Hersman is a technologist, blogger, and commentator. He is also an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, who specializes in the impact and application of technology throughout Africa. Erik was raised in Sudan and Kenya. He's a graduate of Kenya's Rift Valley Academy and Florida State University, go Seminoles. Basically he has all kinds of things. We could sit here for another 10 minutes and tell you all the incredible things that Erik's been a part of. Most interesting to me, as the father of several former missionary kids, Erik was a missionary kid in Africa. So we are thrilled and excited to have Erik back for the second straight year. Erik's going to talk about energy, Bitcoin mining, and just the ways in which those things get down on a much more personal and practical level. So please, everyone, come in here and greet Erik Hersman.
Hey everybody, I know it's right after lunch, so I was actually going to start with a video by a friend of mine that came out of nowhere last year. He goes by Bitcoin Shooter on Twitter. And it actually probably does a better job of explaining what we do than I do. So I'm going to start with that so I didn't rehash what I said last year.
400 million Africans live without electricity. But that's changing.
I have 3 cattle. When using a machete for chopping that fodder, I would have used 2 or 3 hours to chop enough food for my cattle. But with this, 10 minutes. It is very fast.
Time is so important, most important.
Most important.
Our kids have improved in their studies. They couldn't study well because we were using candles and kerosene, which will damage our eyes because of the smoke. And we also see the benefit because we charge our phones well, we watch TV, things have been perfect, a comfortable life.
Wow, amazing.
How did they get power? It starts with naturally running water, which feeds into a hydro power plant. Problem is, it's normally not profitable to build a rural power plant like this.
My name is Thomas Poelmans. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hydrobox. We produce power for the local community. This site is located in Murang'a County. That's in central Kenya. We were producing power, but back in the day only able to sell 40%. And of course, economically, that doesn't make any sense. I got to know Erik, and I was talking to him about our challenge.
We said, okay, what if we came in and we gave you 100% usage right away? Our job at Gridless is Bitcoin mining. We'll walk in a 20-foot container with 130 miners in it. We turn it on, all of a sudden their finances are different. Just like the villager who's getting electricity for the first time, and now they can envision a different future. Same thing happens with energy providers. Immediately they can start thinking about the future, and they can start thinking about, oh, there's that other site I wanted to go and energize. I haven't been able to get the money because I haven't been able to prove that I will be able to pay it back. Now I can.
There's at least 90 locations that we've disqualified because there's simply not enough demand. So if now Bitcoin mining can come in, then all of a sudden it becomes viable for us to develop a project. That's a fundamental paradigm shift for a company like us.
We win because we're mining Bitcoin. The power generation group wins because they're finally financially viable. And because of that, more people can be connected to electricity right away. It's absolutely phenomenal.
What are your goals in life?
Goals. To expanding my farming, rearing chicken, and other businesses like welding.
Before power, were you thinking about these goals?
No.
Impossible.
Impossible.
Thank you so much. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Welcome.
I hope you grow your family very big, okay?
I'll grow.
20 kids, okay?
I'll grow.
It's finally profitable to build rural power plants, thanks to Bitcoin mining. As a result, electricity is coming to Africa.
All of a sudden, our market has opened up to the entire African continent because the Bitcoin mining can basically come anywhere we go. Then all of a sudden we can be developing 50, 100, 200, 300 megawatts. If we deploy 300 megawatts in rural Africa, then we're able to change and impact the lives between 7 and 10 million people.
All right, so yeah, I think Bitcoin Shooter did a great job on that. He's actually doing a larger documentary about Bitcoin and inflation, right? So you can look him up on Twitter. So what I thought might be interesting is just to give you a little bit of background. You heard from Jordan. I grew up in Sudan and Kenya, missionary kid, and that was my ticket to Africa. Then I went back after I graduated university here and started building technology businesses. So my history has been in building in the technology space, software, hardware, and infrastructure, which uniquely lends itself to Bitcoin mining. So our job at Gridless is to push electricity further to the edges and further decentralize Bitcoin's network, right? That's the simple goal we have. A quick primer on Bitcoin mining, because I'm guessing not everybody really knows what it is. The purpose of Bitcoin mining is to secure the Bitcoin network. So the more energy we use, the better it is for the Bitcoin network itself, and the more secure that network is. Why mining? It's location agnostic, so it can be done in Texas or it can be done in rural Malawi. It encourages new energy to be built. It can be done far out in the sticks, like you're going to, or you've already seen. It balances the local power grid and it secures the world's best money. What we actually are doing is we're looking for pockets of wasted energy. So whether you're in Malawi or whether you're in the UK, this is what your power draw looks like. So this is from a village in Malawi on the left, and this is the national data from the UK. And you can see that in those graphs, there's a lot of waste, right? That waste, if I simplify it, in that orange bit, is the actual Bitcoin mining that can be done, right? And that's what becomes really valuable to both people who know nothing about Bitcoin, to people who need energy, and to people who want to make Bitcoin. What does it actually look like? So warehouses, right? So you hear about these in some of the big countries like the US and China, massive warehouses. They're containerized, like you see in Canada and Dubai. There's cabinets like we do in Kenya. There's a really great one in Lebanon where they have these like garages and little spaces that they tuck away 5 Bitcoin miners, 3 Bitcoin miners. And then in sheds in Nigeria, right? Like it takes place all over the world in very different ways, and it looks very different, but it's all Bitcoin mining. And then there's even home mining where you might just be running one out of your house. So let's just quickly flip through what it takes to build a Bitcoin mine in Africa. So you're coming to a space and you have a river and you're trying to take the energy off of it, and you're diverting some of it to a Bitcoin mining container, and the rest goes to the village, and they always get first draw on that power, okay? So whenever they need the power, they get it, and then we turn off a mining machine. So we walk into a site like this one in Zambia, 700 kilowatts. The owner calls us and says, listen, I'm actually only using about 36% of this in real time, all the time. So what can I do? We said, well, let's do a revenue share on that power. We walk in and we make our containers in Nairobi. We take them overland, 2,000 kilometers over Africa's best roads, to site. It's not always OSHA compliant the way we do things, but it works. It works in Africa. We set up connectivity. So we always have a Starlink, and we also have LTE, 5G, 4G kind of connectivity. So we bond those two services to make sure we always have a connection. Then we start loading miners, right? These are the world's dumbest computers. They do one thing. They're very poorly made, so we have to fix them all the time. And we just load them into the container. And then this takes us about 2 days to get this far. The next day, we're setting it up and turning it on. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. My business partner on the left, Philip, is. So I'm the hired help. I usually am just carrying miners and plugging them in. And by day 3, we're set up, running, and they're making money, right? And we're making money. And that's how Bitcoin mining is done. It sounds fairly simple, right? There's a few nuances in there that make it a little more complicated. Okay, so now we understand what Bitcoin mining is, kind of what Gridless does. But what I wanted to actually talk about this year, instead of rehashing everything I talked about last year, was something that I'm calling the basics, right? Because we've been thinking a lot about like people, just the people that are served by the energy that's out there. And so I was thinking about the basics, and I was like, well, basics are fundamentals, right? They're the essential things, the functional things in life, right? And one of those is faith, right? The reason why we're all here at this conference, right? And there's, regardless of your position on organized religion, faith is a critical component for life. Without faith, it is nearly impossible to love others, achieve goals, and take on important and immensely complex realities, believing that you can succeed and achieve. Money is another. So money comes in many forms, right? And it often society will triangulate around something that they call money. So you heard that I grew up in South Sudan. This is my dad. He was a Bible translator, so he was working with the Toposa tribe. It usually takes about 15 to 20 years to learn the language, create an alphabet for it, create primers in it, teach people to read and write in it, and then start translating the Bible. But the Toposas, for many years, have been using cattle as their money, as their currency. And if you need something smaller, then you use goats. If you need something smaller, you use beads or metal bangles. So the Toposa beads here are interesting, right? Each white bead signifies a separate herd, which is roughly 20 cattle. This man had 6. So he had 120 cattle, and they're wearing their account balance around with them. And you'll oftentimes see somebody with 3 or 4 stacks of these around their neck. So energy is basic. Energy is that base layer for human progress. Until the mid-19th century, the dominant source of energy used across the world was traditional non-sustainable biomass. Solid fuels such as wood, crop waste, dung, or charcoal. The Industrial Revolution led to an exponential growth of energy usage to produce an ever-increasing store of goods and wealth. The story of human advancement is the story of energy. Without reliable energy, improved healthcare, food systems, and cleaner environments are not possible. So whether we're talking a person hunting to feed his family, someone digging in a field to plant crops, carrying water, boiling water, moving something on a truck, or riding on an airplane, it's your body's energy. It's the wood's energy. It's the oil combusting. If we know our history, we realize why there was a jump forward in human progress when we domesticated cattle and horses. We can see the jump from animals to steam. We have seen the jumps when energy costs less and is more efficient with just electricity in our grandparents' time. So as an example of this, in 1800, people could travel from New York City to Baltimore in 3 days by horse. By 1930, they could do it from New York to anywhere in the US in 3 days. This is the pin, when the golden peg, or golden, forgetting the word, when they put the 2 railway tracks together in the middle of the US. In 1890, 25% of American households had running water, and only 8% had electricity. By 1950, 60 years later, 83% had running water and 94% had electricity. So there's this really interesting way to visualize this, right? Each American today has the energy equivalent of nearly 600 human energy servants, providing around-the-clock energy services. It's a fantastic kind of theoretical exercise to help us understand how truly lucky we are. And what if we took all of our modern fuels and then asked ourselves, how much human power would we need in order to produce the daily tasks that we've grown accustomed to? As we get on with our everyday lives, it becomes apparent just how distant we are from the real value and impact that the energy we have access to has. The more detached daily lives have become from these machines, the easier it is to take it all for granted. and to lose sight of the energy technology at the foundations of our modern way of life. So the BBC did this crazy thing called the Human Power Station, where they took 80 cyclists to power a home. So I'm just going to play just the teaser for it.
Hello, welcome to a very special edition of Bang Goes the Theory. Now, we've put up this house outside our studio, and inside a family of 4 are fast asleep, and they're here to take part in a massive experiment. The only thing is, they've absolutely no idea what that experiment is. In fact, we've genuinely no idea whether or not it's going to work. Liz, are we up and running in there?
We are indeed, Dallas. We are about to do something that no one in the world has ever tried to do before. We're going to unplug that house from the main supply and try to power it in a completely different way. Welcome to the Human Power Station.
12 grueling hours, 80 human dynamos. But just one question. Can we really pull this off?
Oh my God, guys!
All right, so the answer is they can't, right? And when the power spikes in the evening, when they start turning on the TV and the ovens and everything's running, they actually can't keep it up anymore, and they get a power outage. Then they take the family and they walk them in next door to where those 80 cyclists are, and they're like, this is where your energy was coming from all day. Do you realize how much? So we're distanced from it. We have this abstraction between where we live and what we do every day and the energy required for it. Just as an aside, it took 24 cyclists just to heat the oven, right? Okay, so why does all this matter? It matters because there's 1.1 billion people without power. 600 million of them are in Africa. And that's just not access, that's not affordability, that is just availability of energy, right? Of electricity itself. So while you have the equivalent of these aforementioned 600 people working for you and me to make life what it is today, to open the world up to our ideas, our innovations, our investments in progressing your lives and those of our children, these others are getting left further and further behind. I'm not saying this to make anybody feel guilty. It's just to have an understanding of what's going on in the world and why we should be paying attention to it as believers. A practical way of seeing this is substituting electric lights for kerosene lamps and how that boosts nighttime illumination and reduces smoke inhalation, improving overall health. Another is how washing machines saved hours of housework, hours that could be reallocated to other tasks. So this is a picture of a house being turned on in rural Malawi. And this house is also a store, so now he can be open at night as well as during the day. So there's this moral imperative for why we need energy access in Africa. And James 2:15-16, I think, is good for this. Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? So while it's important that someone translates the Bible into a mother tongue, and that local pastors are trained to speak the gospel, it's also important that we look to the basics, the energy needs of those in the same communities. For it is by this access to affordable energy that they're able to make the most progress in upgrading their lives. So how does this look in the real world, right? So I threw a couple of interesting charts in here for everybody to see, and you can read this on your own, but you can see the difference in somebody's life in a country that has a certain amount of power and one that doesn't, right? And it affects so many different walks of life. Another way of looking at it, as you can see, is the global per capita energy consumption and population living on less than $30 a day, and how it kind of falls off the chart. So if you're not in one of those countries that has enough energy, you just fall off like a waterfall. And one of the other charts I found super interesting was the one on the right, which shows when you have access to electricity and it's affordable, what it does for the types of machines you can use that replaces your energy. Okay, so building energy. How does Bitcoin build energy? So one of the things that has become exciting for us has been learning about energy. We were tech guys who built hardware and software and deployed it, but we didn't do energy yet. We've had to learn about it. And last year, I had done the research and then written a report on energy and Bitcoin mining in Africa. And I was asking the question, why aren't people investing in this? It would make more sense if they coupled these together. But we couldn't figure out why people weren't doing it until we realized that it actually didn't make business sense, right? There's not enough customers, they're not making enough money, so normal investors won't do it, so concessionary financiers come in. So at Gridless, what we've been doing thus far is finding guys who've built the energy already and don't have it used and going to them. But now we've started to do feasibility studies of potential new energy sites to build ourselves. So this is in Malawi. There's 2 megawatts on this river. You know, our team is out there speaking with the community, working with them to figure out where it could be, making sure we have land access rights. And, you know, it's kind of a basic engineering project at the end of the day. You get into the weeds on what this is. This is one that's happening in Kenya. It's a smaller site, 500 kilowatts. It's at a site on the slopes of Mount Kenya that is for wildlife, right? And so this concession hasn't been able to maintain its income. So we talked to them and we said, well, if we could put some Bitcoin mining on one of your rivers, which is some of the best fly fishing in East Africa, you know, what could happen, right, is that you don't have to rely on the tourism that doesn't always make it in the time you need it. So what we realized is that Bitcoin itself is a financial reactor, and from a relatively modest initial stack of Bitcoin, we can develop a massive amount of new energy and then produce more Bitcoin to accelerate the development of even more energy. A supercritical financial reaction that creates an ever-increasing amount of new energy production. And what we've been missing out on is that we hadn't fully moved into the Bitcoin standard in our own business. Like the full stack had to be Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, it's done by using Bitcoin to finance energy. It's done by Bitcoin mining, making new energy profitable. It's done by realizing that Bitcoin is the market maker for energy price. Simply stated, the Gridless model is to financially leverage a deflationary asset, Bitcoin, to build the key input, energy, for producing more of the deflationary asset, Bitcoin, lather, rinse, and repeat, all without ever selling a single Bitcoin. Another way to look at it here in this graph, and you can see by borrowing USD against our Bitcoin asset at market terms and using the US dollars to build tangible energy assets, it opens up this world of almost perpetual energy. So to simplify this, I think of it this way. It's almost like a HELOC on a home in the US, where you're taking this asset, you're borrowing against it, and you're building something else. So there is no technology, regulatory, or process hurdles that need to be overcome in order to realize a significant growth in our new energy development. The multiplier effect of using Bitcoin as the economic foundation of this growth means that in 10 years, you can take the equivalent of $20 million and build 100 megawatts of energy. That would normally require $300 million in capital to build. This approach is effectively an improvement on the MicroStrategy model, so MicroStrategy Plus, of raising capital to buy and hold Bitcoin by additionally leveraging that Bitcoin to build assets that will produce more Bitcoin. Further, the tangible revenue-generating assets being built have a 50 to 100-year productive life-producing energy, which is a foundational commodity that will always have an increasing demand. Without ever selling the underlying Bitcoin, Gridless can ensure that there's a real Bitcoin return over the 30 years, life of the generation asset being built, and it makes really good returns for everybody. So we started doing research across the continent, and it quickly became clear there's a lot of hydro available. And when you look into the energy itself and the makeups of it, you get down to the different types, right? And what you need to understand from this slide is what we call the LCOE, so the levelized cost of energy. And the levelized cost of energy is the fully capitalized, operated, and financed cost for producing a megawatt of energy. And run-of-river hydro is the least expensive. So now run-of-river sites will provide the best Bitcoin mining economics on a global basis for the foreseeable future. In other words, there is a near unlimited supply of energy to be developed in the one place on Earth that needs additional energy the most. So we needed a framework to put this in our own minds. And so there's this terminology in nuclear reaction that there's two milestones. The first is criticality. It's when the nuclear reaction produces enough neutrons to sustain itself or releasing energy in the form of heat. This is the normal state of nuclear reactant. The second state is called supercriticality. It's when the reaction produces more neutrons than required to simply sustain itself, and an ever-increasing amount of energy is released. And it could also go supercritical, perpetually building, and it could, when the state is left uncontrolled, it leads to the devastation of a nuclear explosion. So that's considered bad. So if I think of Bitcoin as a fuel for a financial reactor, though, for energy, then I could see that gridless model had the potential to go both critical, perpetually sustaining the energy in itself financially, and it could also go supercritical in building more energy. So, however, instead of unleashing devastation, which is what we don't want, the supercritical reaction would help to drive economic progress in the communities where the energy was developed. It would be like an explosion going off, but an explosion that radically improves the security, health, and livelihoods of everyone in its radius. So, why supercriticality? 3 reasons. First, the supercritical reaction of leveraging Bitcoin is the fuel for financial reaction. While we often think of Bitcoin as being a foundational commodity asset, the world's most foundational commodity asset is energy. So supercriticality can only be reached if Bitcoin is used to develop new energy at a lower average cost per kilowatt, and then that energy is then used to produce more Bitcoin at a higher net margin, and the profit margin is reinvested to build more low-cost energy. So second, we talked about the 600 million Africans who don't have access to energy, and the biggest problem is the business model. So while energy access itself won't solve all the social ills, energy is absolutely the necessary foundation for building the businesses and products and solutions that are needed to solve the problems. So these are actual numbers from a real 500 kilowatt site, right? And you can see that there's a lot of inefficiency in the system right now. So what has kept Africa from taking advantage of this tremendous energy abundance is the fact that it's plagued by the same demons that's plagued Africa for generations, which is Western aid money instead of real investment. So the funders know that these numbers aren't real. The developers know the numbers aren't real, and that they both participate in this willful delusion. So from our viewpoint, it's super critical that we fix this broken model of energy development and build an economically productive model for building energy across Africa. And third, it's the state of Bitcoin mining that has been moving towards centralization itself. We have an enormous problem with a handful of mining pools controlling the majority of the global hash rate. We need more teams like Ocean who are out there building more pools. The bigger challenge is the rapid growth of the pubco miners who are building these very large sites where you do 100 megawatts at a time. This concentration of mining activities is in only a few sites, controlled by a few companies, is the antithesis of what the world's first decentralized and permissionless money needs to be to ensure its long-term survival. We believe that it is super critical that we build and share openly a model for Bitcoin-based energy development that will dramatically increase the number of Bitcoin mining sites and the number of companies that are protecting the network. So Bitcoin mining means more electricity in Africa. This is Letitia. She's in Malawi. We need more people like Letitia who can now turn on a TV, who can turn on a hot pot, and actually access the electricity that is abundant around them. So we've tried to bring light to this enormous benefits that Bitcoin's energy demands have for the future of Africa. But my hope is to get everyone in Bitcoin to be as excited and passionate about Bitcoin's ever-increasing need for more energy as we are at Gridless. What better way is there for us to use our Bitcoin stack than to view it as a financial reactor and drive to reach a supercritical state of new energy development? Thank you.